In this video, I'm going to talk a little bit about the fundamentals of blocking with a longsword in the sport of armored combat and Buhurt. All right, so we're going to talk, like I said today, about blocking with a longsword. Now, I'm going to be very upfront that I am not a fantastic longsword fighter. It is not something I specialize in. I do it for fun, but I'm not the best at it. I am fortunate enough to be trained by a couple of the best, or trained with a couple of the best. So Samurai, who's won longsword championships, international U.S. national championships multiple times. I've been lucky enough to fight against him and train with him and watch a lot of his fights and learn from him. And then Dustin Brooks, who also trains with Sam, who's another fantastic longsword fighter, has taught me a lot about his techniques that him and Sam have worked on. So I'm going to share some of that and some of the fundamentals of blocking and how I use longsword and think about longsword when I'm blocking and fighting. So when I talk about training with swords for Buhurt, I often talk about using a waster, a wooden sword like this with no cross guard, right? No quillions. This is great for almost all striking practice. I really recommend wooden wasters. This is from Hickory Arms. If I remember, I'll put a link down below to them. They make wooden wasters, and I really like theirs. I've had a couple. They've lasted a long time. Consider the fact that I beat on them a lot. They're really, really durable. And they're great for practicing striking. Why do I like a waster? Because it's a lot cheaper to buy one of these than one with a crossguard, and it does 90% of what I want for practice. When I'm just working on a PEL and practicing, striking either skill-wise or cardio or whatever. So these are great. However, it's really hard to talk about blocking with these because you're missing one of the most important tools, the crossguard, right? So we're going to put this down for now. I'm going to pick up a different sparring tool, a foam sparring weapon for, LARP or foam sparring or whatever you want to call it. This is a Purple Heart Armory sword. I really like these. I just got this. A lot of people in my school started using these. What's cool about this is kind of a rubber grip. It's a very strong grip. I wouldn't want to hit someone hard with this, but the foam and the blade is really, really soft, even a little flexible and whippy like a real long sword. So it emulates the closest I've seen to a steel sword. So, you're going to want to have a sparring sword of some kind if you want to do longsword sparring. If you want to practice, you don't want to be in steel every time you train. Purple Heart Armory, I really like these, and I think they're great. If they're in stock, I would buy them. They seem to go out of stock pretty quickly, and I'll put a link down these below. Again, not affiliated with either of these companies. I just like their stuff, and I like to recommend the things that I use. So, as you can see, the big difference here, other than being wood and foam, is you got the crossguard here, right? So, you're going to use this to block. You're protecting your hands or protecting your body. So we'll talk about longsword fighting in Buhurt, right? And it's different than really fighting longsword with a sword because there is no stabbing in this sport. We know this. So it's only strikes. So because it's only strikes, you can defend a little bit differently. You don't have to worry about a stab. Everything has to be coming in with a swinging motion. So the fundamentals of this is really keeping your longsword out as far as you can and keep your arms as straight as possible. If I bend my arms in, I'm allowing myself to get hit here, and I'm keeping it out. The straighter I can keep this, the more I'm covering just with the blade. And I'm going to keep that as vertical as I can and keep those quillions squared to me. I'm going to turn this way a little bit so you can kind of see. So it's going to be vertical-ish like this. I tend to lean forward a little bit. That's fine. But you don't want to be pointing it way out here. One, you don't want someone to run into it, a strike, a stab, and get called for a stab. But also, I find I can defend better with this. So take a regular fighting stance, athletic stance, feet shoulder width apart, whichever foot forward you're using. I tend to use my left foot forward, being a lefty with longsword. I get a little more reach because my left hand is on top of the sword, right hand at the bottom. But so I've got this stance, I've got the sword pretty vertical. To block with this sword, I'm basically trying to determine one of two types of strikes coming in from my opponent. And is that a flick type shot, so it's kind of snapping down, or is it something that's going to come across and really come across hard or come at harder angles? The reason I'm doing that is I'm practicing how I'm going to use these quillions, this crossguard, to do most of my blocking if possible. And what I mean by that is if I'm holding up here and a strike's coming down on this side, I'm simply going to rotate and block it here. If it comes the other side, I'm rotating this way. So you can rotate bottom hand or top hand. I tend to use top hand. I think Dustin tends to use bottom hand in their rotation. The key to this, though, is keeping this sword as still-ish as possible. What I mean by that is I don't want this big, like, boom, out here. Because if I miss time, if I'm wrong and that shot's not coming here, it's coming here, I'm now getting hit right in the head. If I'm here, I have the ability to adjust pretty quickly if I make a mistake. And so these are really minor blocks. You're doing minor adjustments back and forth. And you can practice this in a mirror or in a camera like I'm doing right now while talking to all of you, where I'm keeping that sword upright, keep my arms as straight as I can, trying to bring them in where I get those elbows flared out, which is super common. And from here, I'm going to keep it out straight, and I'm going to rotate that blade to cover myself. Now, it's going to move some. It's not perfect. You're not just going like straight here, but you're kind of looking at where you can move that sword and keep it pretty centered. Why? Because if I do this, it's very easy to follow up with a strike. If I do this, it's very easy to follow up with a strike. I'm not sacrificing a lot of my speed with this huge blocks, which is going to really, again, throw me off, right? So that's strike one. How do you practice that? Get in a mirror and look at yourself. Look at that blade and where are you covering, right? How much am I covering? How straight am I keeping my arms? How much am I protecting myself from most of those strikes that are going to be coming down on you? We're not talking about leg strikes right now. We're talking about the common longsword strikes that are coming up here. Why? Because most people are going to throw their strikes most of the time. They're most effective. And honestly, if someone wants to throw a big leg shot at you, well, you just tag them back because it's a game of points. It's not a game of who gets hit first here. There are no doubles in elimination. Worst case, if someone hits my leg and I hit them at the shoulder, well, we both score a point. Nothing matters. We're back to even, right? So most effective shots are coming up somewhere in this quadrant, right? Now to do that, I'm going to be blocking those kind of flick shots, those kind of hand shots, those quick elbow shots, just with that rotation. And I'm going to practice that in a mirror, 10 this way, maybe back and forth, and try to keep that as stable as I can and reset to center. And keep those arms out straight. See my arms folded in, it tends to happen, you get tired, you do this, or you do this. You want to keep it out there and it kind of forcing that person to come at you, right? So that's one block, one type of block, kind of that short, quick block. The other type of block is very similar, but you are going to move your sword, you're going to move your handle, and try to keep your tip as centered as possible. So it's a bigger strike or straight coming from the outside, or one that you're not going to be able to block with this. It's simply going to rotate the quilling again and angle the blade out. I'm still keeping this tip as centered as I can. It will move, I mean, we're human, but I'm going to be bam. That's the entire motion. Block out. Other way, it's going to be the same thing, block out. Turning it out so I can catch the blade here if I can, or catch it on there depending on where it's coming down. But I'm not going to be pushing the blade out here. And then you can see pretty easily what the difference, right? If I block and I push the blade way out here, if I'm wrong, look at all of me exposed. If I push the blade here, I still have the sword coming down vertically, still can't get past any of this. It has to be on the total opposite side. I've got to read that strike completely wrong. And I might even have time to move back. If you're moving your sword like this is a lot of rotation and very hard to recover from. So think about the least amount of movement that you have in a block, the less time it's going to take you to recover, to throw a strike, anything else, and you're not going to overcommit. So same thing, arm out straight. I'm just going to block out. I'm going to keep it as kind of that angle there, keep that tip above my head. Other way, I'm going to block out. And block out. So the difference between the first block is just these little swings like this to kind of block your hand shots, your arm shots, these little flick shots, and then block out. Now you can see I'm not perfect at this. I'm an okay longsword fighter. I'm trying to get better at it, but I want to share the techniques with you that I'm learning so you can get better. I think a lot of us spend a decent amount of time swinging at a pell or swinging at a tree or something or sparring, and we all love to throw strikes. I don't know how many of us spend time focusing on blocks. So I wanted to talk about that as a two fundamental longsword blocks that if you can do that, you're going to be a better fighter. You're also going to frustrate your opponents. One thing about fighting Sam in particular, who's an incredible longsword fighter, is you will work to really find an angle, and he seems to have no movement and block it. So it's block, 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 like this. And so they're throwing all these shots trying to get in there, and he's just doing this, back and forth, and keeping that sword kind of centered on his body point at all times and arms out. That's all I got for you today. Practice it. If you got questions, you can leave comments below. If you want to know more, see other kinds of techniques, let me know as well. I'm going to be sharing a little more of these technique videos, I think, coming up that I've been working on and trying to become a better fighter. So hopefully you all out there can become a better fighter as well. Get on the Woodchuck Night, like, share, follow, all that stuff. Help grow my channel so we help grow the sport. See y'all later.